it's Ken Gagne with YouTube channel Gamebits here to play Lumino City for the tvOS. That is the Apple TV, also available for iOS and Steam. This game is a point-and-click adventure, and I'm playing it solely with the Apple TV remote. So I just skipped the opening of the game where Lumi, the main character, her grandfather is kidnapped, and you are off to Lumino City to find and rescue him and to determine who performed this dastardly deed. So this is the city. It looks like it was once very grand. I just need to find a way up. Now what makes Lumino City so fascinating is that all this stuff that you see, there's not much at the beginning of the game. We're not even in the city yet, but this is all not 3D modeling and graphic and computer and digital animation. This is actually a real set that they built, which is amazing. Now let's see. Nobody's coming to get me, so let me see if I can get this stick right here. Got me a stick. Put it in my bag. Now I'm going to go back and grab this. They want me to look in my bag. This is still part of the tutorial, I suppose. And hold an item. Now I'm going to hit it with the bell. There we go. Jump back up there, grab the hook, hit the bell with my stick. Doing. And somebody answers the call, and up we go. Now look at that. That is a physical, actual place that you were looking at. This is something that somebody built with their bare hands and then put a game in it. That's amazing. Have you seen my granddad? Your granddad, I don't know. What's he look like? Old, big mustache? You mean the handyman? Nope, I haven't seen him in ages. Is that all you got for me on my seat for? Don't know why I bother. Alright, so now I gotta figure out how to get into the city. And as I explore Lumino City, you're gonna be hearing from Whittaker, the director of State of Play Games, the publisher and developer of this game. They spent an entire year building the city, a single day filming it, and then the rest of the time creating the actual game, which came out, as I said, in 2014 for Steam, 2015 for iOS. And tvOS, one of the very first ever tvOS games. So you're going to be hearing about the art of crafting this real world, being one of the first Apple TV developers, and also creating the character of Lumi, who was featured in the Leading Ladies Humble Indie Bundle last summer. So stay tuned for more information all about that as I play Lumino City. Today I'm chatting with Whittaker, director of State of Play Games. Hello, Luke.
Hello.
So happy to have you on the IndieSider show. Lumino City is a game not like any other.
Oh, thanks. No, I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely not made like any other.
No, I can imagine not. You slaved on this game for literally years. It finally came out for Steam in 2014 and for iOS and tvOS in 2015. Are you still working on the game, or is this finally the end of your long journey?
Well, I mean, there's always more platforms. At the moment, we're taking a break from developing it for another platform. But of course, there's Android, there's possible consoles. But, you know, we need to also focus on promoting it for, you know, the platforms we've got it out for at the moment. There's only 4 of us, so we have a limited amount of time. And yeah, so that's what we're doing. We've also got some other projects on as well.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing more about those, but I want to know a little bit more about the background of Lumino City. This design approach that you use of crafting an actual physical city is, like I said, very unusual and very rare. And I'm curious to know if you had any sort of inspiration or precedents that suggested to you that this kind of design was even possible, or if you were, as far as you knew, breaking new ground. What sort of games or other designs did you look to for inspiration to let you know that video games like this are even possible?
Well, I'd seen some things like this. There's, you know, The Neverhood came out in the 90s, which was all claymation. And I looked at some of these things and just thought, well, yeah, that's great, but now, you know, we could push this even further. And I mean, it wasn't all based around wanting just to do better than that or whatever. It was almost like a little internal process we had of how can we tell the best story. So it went initially from something that was hand drawn into something that was 3-dimensional. So there was literally almost like a 3-stage process that where we didn't know where it was going, but I can look back and go, okay, first stage was drawing, second stage, I cut out those drawings and took a photograph of them. And when that created some lovely effects with, in camera, then we moved on to doing it, with the camera. And I thought, well, I can actually move the camera as well. So there was a certain amount of, just going at it and working out that it was possible. But it was also, probably standing on a bit of solid ground, seeing that it was done as far back as the 90s.
I mean, most people, when they see a game like this, they imagine that it would have been easier to just go with 3D art and digital animation and do everything in the realm of a computer, but you actually spent an entire year building a physical city. Was that because you thought it was better or easier or just different?
It was, I feel it's better. I mean, personally, I've always made art by hand, and, given the option between learning 3D programming and doing stuff by hand, I've always done stuff by hand. So a lot of the games that we've made and that we made up until Lumino City were all two-dimensional, but I would somehow make it three-dimensional. So, there's a game that we made called Headspin Storybook where I was making what looks like a clockwork pop-up book, but it was kind of faked, so it had perspective and all that, but all the elements were hand-drawn. So anyway, I feel like doing these models by hand gives an element of personality and something extra that you just can't get doing a computer model. Like, you can see, the model maker's hand in it, and you can see the intention of the artist a whole lot clearer than if there's a computer in the way.
Do you find that people who play the game necessarily know that you used a physical model? Because going into the game, without any background or other knowledge, it looks like it could have been 3D animated.
Yeah, I've watched Let's Play videos where it's a good 15 minutes in, and someone's gone, "This is amazing." I mean, they don't look like they've tried to go for the effect of this being made really by hand, and then something's popped up on the channel saying, overlaid text saying, "We did some research and it is actually made by hand." So. I don't mind either way. It shouldn't just be about the fact that it's made. I'm really pleased that happened, because the guy was enjoying the gameplay without even knowing how it was built, and that's the important thing. This isn't just a gimmick to go, "Oh look, we're doing something different, look at us because of this." It's because it really helped us create a world and an atmosphere and tell the story and all the little details, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, you're not hammering them over the head with it.
No.
Okay. Now, this set that you created has so many intricate parts, both stationary and moving, lights, windmills, and so much more. What was the most challenging feature of Lumino City to create?
Good point. I mean, that's really tough because everything was, but in a different way. So, trying to think. I mean, there were things that were just sort of challenging in terms of just a lot of work. So I had to animate a lot of that character by hand. She runs around, and she has to cast a realistic shadow and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that was me just having to do some legwork there. But yeah, in terms of the more interesting stuff is how we built the city itself. And so I suppose the challenging stuff was making a windmill work. And we were trying to figure out, okay, do we do this with stop motion? Well, yeah, but then you don't get the nice motion blur. And we wanted to do as much in camera as possible. So in the end, I thought I might have to buy a £200, $500 low geared motor to make this thing turn. And then discovered that for $5, I could buy one off the internet and buy a microwave motor instead. So I just ended up with a tiny little microwave motor inside, which did the job perfectly. So there were all these little challenges along the way. And probably, I think the toughest one was the moving city at the end, which is it's like an apartment block where every single block can move in and out. And it's this space that you have to traverse. It becomes a 3D moving maze. And we were like, God, how are we going to do this in camera? We thought about systems of camshafts and all sorts of crazy stuff. And in the end, stop motion was the only way that we could do that. And still, that became a massive headache because it needed to move in time, and every block had to be in the right place for it to even be a puzzle. Otherwise, if one's in the wrong place, you could easily run through it. And I developed a whole system of doing that, and I'd never done any stop motion before. A lot of people think that the whole game is stop motion, and that we're stop motion experts, but actually that was the first time I'd ever done stop motion. And 90% of this is actually just filmed, just letting the camera roll, moving the camera around the city.
Wow, very impressive. And if I understand correctly, you worked for a full year to create the set and then did all the filming in just a single day?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah, that was high pressure, that was. 'Cause, I mean, we didn't, forcefully want to put that pressure on ourselves, but we filmed it with a motion control camera, which is, a huge robot arm, which is often used in TV and film, and is generally out of the reach of budgets of small indie companies. So they don't have they don't have a pricing scheme for indie games companies, and it costs about, I don't know, let's say $3,000 at least, $4,000 per day to rent. And so that meant, because this is all self-funded, we were just like, well, we'll just do this in a day. And I mean, it sounds impossible with the entire game to film in a day, but when we lived with it for a year by that point, and right from the beginning to the end, I'd taken it. I'd done, along with everyone on the team and with the architects that we worked with as well. We understood the story so much, and we were kind of seeing it in our sleep by then, that by that critical point, that one day, that was all we could think about anyway. So I couldn't do it in a day now, but by then I was just like a Lumino City making machine.
And after working on that set for an entire year, I mean, this is not a digital set where you can just archive it to an external hard drive or upload it to the cloud. This is a physical set that takes up physical space. What do you do with it when you're done with it?
I put it in my studio and I look at it like we've got, like I'm doing now. It's just, it's in the corner of our studio, in bits, fitted wherever we can find space. So it's built on a scale that fits our studio, which is big enough for about 4 or 5 people. And we've got rid of a little lounge area, and that's taking up that space now. But it's toured the country a little bit. It's been up to the Game City Festival in Nottingham, where we did a huge exhibition on it, and we put it all back together for that. And it's been an exhibition in Somerset House in London, and also an exhibition at the V&A Museum in London as well. So I mean, we're hoping that a lot more people will get to see this, and now there's an audience that understand what it is and have played the game. I think it'll be a whole lot more magical for people to see this at exhibitions and events.
As you port the game to other platforms, do you ever have to go back to the set and do some pickup shots?
No, that was one thing where that was what made it a pressure situation, because the lighting setup and all that kind of stuff had to basically everything would have to match. There's no way we would be able to match the same shot again. We could do interiors again, because that's where the camera cuts, and we could get away with replacing them with a different interior. But we haven't had to so far. We made this game with multiple platforms in mind from the beginning, so far it seems to work. And until someone asks us to make it for Oculus Rift.
Oh gosh. That would be both amazing and a bear to work on. Oh
my god, yeah. I mean, I'm like, well, maybe let's just 3D scan this whole thing and we can do it that way. I don't know. Not yet.
So I first encountered Lumino City when it was included last summer in the Leading Ladies 2 Humble Bundle. How did you go about creating the characters, and especially the protagonist, for Lumino City?
I think the fact that she was female was a suggestion of my co-director, Catherine. And we've been discussing the work, the Tomb Raider and strong female leads, and I really liked the dynamic that would be set up with a daughter and the grandfather, which is maybe, it's quite explicit, I suppose, in both of them. It's set up in the original prequel to this, Loom, but he's a handyman and he's incredibly practical, And the whole game, Lumino City, is really about the handing down of skills, and the daughter was just learning everything that he's learned in the process of fixing up this city as you go through, and not learning it like you would at school, like because you have to, but because she wants to help him and save him, and you become sort of naturally interested in that. And I think that's the best. That it struck me as a nice thing, and that and something that I experienced myself with my dad, for example, he's a silversmith, but we grew up making things in a workshop together, and I've picked up had the right tool, how to use the right tool for the job, just by accident, just by sort of watching him and him letting me do stuff. So that was something, and I thought it would be a nice dynamic between a daughter, well, a young girl, and a granddad.
Now, you mentioned the work on the previous game, Loom. What aspects of that original game might veterans of the series pick up in the sequel? For example, I came into Lumino City having not played the original, so what am I missing?
You should be able to pick up Lumino City without missing much, because we begin Lumino City with the end of Loom. Loom is, it establishes a little relationship between the two, but actually, for most of Loom, Grandad isn't in it either. He gets whisked away at the beginning of Lumino City, and then you have to find him. I mean, you'll be, if you've played Loom and you play Lumino City, you'll be familiar with the way things work, and you'll be hopefully sort of have an understanding of, okay, there are going to be lots of mechanical puzzles around and things, but there's no need for you to do one before the other. You may even want to do it the other way around and get a lot out of it that way, because it'll be a sort of nice little, this is where the whole story came.
Do you find a lot of people are going back to the original now that Lumino City is out?
Yeah. We've definitely seen sales of Loom go up, but it's a different thing. It was done a few years before. It's a lot smaller. I mean, you could get through the game in an hour. So we're trying to be quite clear about this. This is not on the scale of Lumino City. And it wouldn't exist. Lumino City would not exist without Loom. It was a way for us to see whether this was possible, and the fact that it was a success and it got nominated for IGF award. That is what gave us the impetus to go on and make Lumino City.
And Lumino City isn't the only app you've come out with lately. You extensively documented the process of creating Lumino City while you were in the trenches and in the weeds, and thus, as a result, produced the Making of Lumino City app, which is an 8-part documentary, an interactive novel, basically, that people can explore to learn more about the game and its creation. What prompted you to release that free companion to the game?
When we were making it, we just knew that what we were doing was interesting to us. Like, we knew that what we were working on, what we had in front of us, was more than it's more than just someone looking at a screen, and we wanted to share this process. And when we saw something that we liked, we just take a photograph of it. And so we ended up with 3 years worth of this stuff. And throughout the process, like, people came in, like a few students came in, like, interviewed us, and we ended up with video footage, and it just felt like there was a story we wanted to tell there. And rather than just doing a film on it, we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if people could actually get their fingers on the way that we made this? And so if you get the making of app from the App Store, then you'll be able to do some of the motions with the camera yourself. Like, the motion control camera really was controlled with a PlayStation controller, like a hacked one. And so we give you a controller on the screen, and you can move the camera left and right. So we can dive people into the process. And I just wanted to get people excited about the way that we'd made it, and maybe come across the game that way as well.
I think it's a wonderful piece that you put together. I'm a big fan of not only director commentaries and the like, but also just any sort of capturing of history. The hardest thing to do to capture history is to be there when it's happening, as opposed to after the fact, trying to get together everything that you remember later. And it was so foresightful of you to have created the information that goes into this app, and I'm really glad that you've made it publicly available like that.
Oh, I'm pleased. And yeah, you've made me think, like, actually, you're right. It would have been a lot harder to go back and do this later. and we'd have misremembered stuff. But what you see there, that is all truth. That all that stuff happened, and we've because we scanned in all our sketches and stuff, you can really feel the progress of the creative process we went through.
I've been playing Lumino City on my 4th generation Apple TV, for which Lumino City is one of the very first games, and there's a lot of risk and a lot of challenge involved in being one of the first games for a new platform. So what was it like being one of the first game developers for tvOS?
It was kind of thrilling for us because it happened so quickly. Soon as it was announced, we thought, wait, this could be, Lumino City could be a good launch title for it. The process turned out to be one that it didn't take too long because it's based on technology that we were developing for iOS. So relatively quickly, we got a version up and running for tvOS. I mean, it needed a lot of work to kind of fine tune the interactions and get that working, but I think it just was one of those things that came about at the right time. We were just about to launch our iOS version. All these things happened all at once. It was pressure because of that. Like we were pretty much simultaneously launching on iOS and tvOS. So poor old Dan, our developer, was suddenly had 3 weeks to pull this together in addition to the work that he already had. So that's why, it was sort of seat of the pants type stuff, and we didn't know right up until the last minute whether or not we were going to get that front page feature. So, and when we did, it's just
It made it all worthwhile.
Oh man, yeah. As a game dev, there isn't much better feelings than that. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, because one of the difficult things to do on the iOS platform is to stand out because there are so many hundreds and thousands of games on there. But with tvOS, you occupy a much larger percentage of the real estate out there.
Yeah, and that's why we was really, really keen on getting that front page feature. I mean, especially in the first weeks, I don't think there was any way of finding things or searching for things that weren't on the front page. I think things have got better, and the store will definitely improve. But it was just, we couldn't have asked for more really to be one of the launch titles. That the timing of that was just perfect.
And you mentioned at the top of the show that you're taking a brief break before working on porting Luminosity to other platforms. I'm hoping one of them might be the Wii U, for which the touchpad and the gamepad interface would be, I think, a good fit. Can you give us any hints or indicators as to what the future of Luminosity is?
Well, I'd like to bring it to as many platforms as possible. We're just the technology is going to be the key to that. I mean, just how we can port this. It took a year to take it from PC to iOS, and it's one that's been made in a way like we weren't following any textbooks. we know our tools, but the animation, for example, is done in Flash, and then we're using various different technologies and hacking them in a way to make them work for us. So putting them, it just depends whether or not we can get these things working on console. So I can't promise anything at the moment. I can tell you that, we've been talking to the major console manufacturers, and they're keen, but we can't promise anything. Can't promise anything yet until we've done some more tests. So there'll be more news basically, probably middle of this year.
Excellent. And can you remind our listeners where they can follow you to make sure that they hear that news?
Yeah, sure. If you follow us on Twitter, we are, our Twitter handle is @state_of_play. Or just search for State of Play, and you should find us. And our website as well, you can sign up to a mailing list there as well if you want. And that is stateofplaygames.com.
Excellent, and those looking for specifically Lumino City can find it at luminicitygame.com. Luke, thank you so much for your time. It's been fun playing Lumino City and learning more about its amazing creation. I appreciate your time.
Amazing. Thanks for the interview. It's great.